Hello, and welcome to the latest Mr. Marr History episode. This time we're looking at the Advanced Higher History course, specifically discussing how we evaluate the usefulness questions in the final exam. Evaluate the usefulness questions are worth 12 marks. You will get 1 mark for each valid piece of information covering the following issues. 3 marks are available for what is called provenance. This means when you talk about the author of the source, the purpose of the source, and the timing of the source. You can also get a further 3 marks for the interpretation of the source. This means when you identify relevant facts from the source and link it to the question. 4 marks are available for giving your own knowledge. This means when you provide facts which you know but are not mentioned in the source. Finally, 2 marks are available for historiography. This is when you discuss what historians think about the particular question and topic. One important tip is always link back to the question. Each time you want to state that a source is or is not useful because, and explain why this is the case. For instance, you might say, the source was made in 1923, this is useful because, and you would explain what else you know about 1923 and the general era in relation to the topic. In terms of quoting from sources, this is the best way to go about it. You have to explain exactly why the quote is relevant to the question. The quote in itself is not enough. It's also good practice to state that the source is useful and also accurate. You can see here an example layout. For instance, source A says, and give the quote, "This is useful because it contains accurate information which shows that," and then you should link this back to the question. Let's look at an example from the Weimar and Nazi Germany topic. This particular one discusses Weimar's constitution, specifically considering the democratic strengths and weaknesses of this document. We start off with our provenance points. Remember, we can gain up to 3 marks for this, talking about the author, the purpose of the source, and also its timing. The first issue we will look at is the timing. In this case, we point out that the source was from 1919, and we explain that this is useful because this was the year that the draft constitution was accepted into law, meaning it's the year Germany became a parliamentary democracy. We then go on to look at why the source was made. We explain why the source was actually produced in the first instance, and we link it to the question, in this case pointing out it changes the previous undemocratic nature of the old Germany and the old empire. Finally, we look at who made the source. We consider what particular insight and expertise that they may have, explaining why this makes them a useful or perhaps not useful source, depending on the issue. Having done this, we move on to the interpretation. This is when we gain up to 3 marks for giving quotes from the source. Each time, it's essential that we don't just give the quote, but that in fact we explain its relevance to the question. You can see here 3 different examples. Each time we start off by giving a quote, and then we go on to explain its relevance. These further 2 examples do the exact same thing, of giving a quote, explaining its relevance, and giving a quote and explaining its relevance, giving us our 3 marks for interpretation. Next we move on to talk about our own knowledge, giving up to 4 marks for facts which are not in the source but are relevant to the question. In this case, we simply identify, of course pointing out the source is not fully useful, giving 1, 2, 3, 4 relevant facts from our knowledge. This leaves our final 2 marks, which are for historiography. In this case, it means talking about what historians have said about a particular issue relevant to the question. We start off by giving our first historian, pointing out in this case what Richard Evans argues, and then we do our second historian as well, in this case K.D. Bracher. Having now gained our 2 historian marks, we have gained the entire 12 marks available in an Evaluate the Usefulness question. Let's now look at this in summary. This is the full answer which is required to gain 12 marks at Advanced Higher for an Evaluate the Usefulness question. Remember, we do 4 key actions. We start off by discussing the provenance of the source. This means talking about who made it, when it was made, and why it was made, linking these to the question. We then go on to get 3 marks for interpretation. This is when we take 3 quotes from the source and we explain their relevance to the specific question. 4 marks are available for our own knowledge. This is when we give 4 facts that are not mentioned in the source but are relevant to answering the question. Finally, we aim to gain 2 marks for our historiography. This is when we identify 2 different historian opinions about the question being discussed. Advanced Higher History. How to answer source questions, specifically evaluate the usefulness. It's really that simple.